Right now, millions of people around the world are hearing the word sanctions. Sanctions on Iran, sanctions on Russia, sanctions threatened by the United States and the European Union. But most people don't actually understand what sanctions really are. Are they just political pressure? Or are they something much more powerful, an economic weapon capable of destroying an entire country's economy without firing a single bullet? Because in today's world, wars are not only fought with missiles and tanks, they are fought with money, banks, trade, and oil. And sanctions have become one of the most powerful tools in global politics. What sanctions actually are? At their core, sanctions are economic punishments placed on a country, company, or individual. Instead of sending soldiers, governments attack something else, the economy. The goal is simple: pressure the targeted country so much financially that it is forced to change its policies or behavior. Sometimes sanctions are imposed by one country alone. Other times they are coordinated by groups like the United Nations or the European Union. But no matter who imposes them, the objective is always the same: create economic pain. The first weapon, trade sanctions. The most common type of sanctions involve trade. Countries simply stop buying or selling certain goods. This can include technology, weapons, luxury products, or even essential resources. One of the biggest targets in trade sanctions is oil. Countries like Iran depend heavily on oil exports to fund their economies. If other countries stop buying that oil, billions of dollars in revenue can disappear almost overnight. This doesn't just hurt governments, it can lead to job losses, inflation, and shortages of basic goods inside the country. And that economic pressure is exactly what sanctions are designed to create. The second weapon, banking restrictions. But trade sanctions are only the beginning. One of the most powerful financial tools in the world is the international banking system. Most global payments move through a network called SWIFT. This system connects thousands of banks across more than 200 countries. It allows money to move instantly across the global economy. Now imagine what happens if a country suddenly gets cut off from that system. Banks can't easily send or receive payments. International trade becomes extremely difficult. Foreign investment disappears, and businesses inside the country struggle to operate. This is exactly what happened to banks in Russia after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Within days, major parts of the Russian financial system were isolated from global markets. The third weapon involves asset freezes. Governments can block access to money owned by individuals, companies, or even entire countries. This means billions of dollars sitting in foreign banks can suddenly become untouchable. For example, after the Ukraine invasion, Western countries froze massive amounts of assets linked to Russia. That included money connected to wealthy individuals, companies, and even central bank reserves. Imagine waking up and discovering that your country's money in foreign banks can no longer be accessed. That's the kind of pressure asset freezes create. But who actually pays the price? In theory, sanctions target governments and political leaders. But in reality, the people who often suffer the most are ordinary citizens. When sanctions hit an economy, prices rise, currencies lose value, businesses close, jobs disappear. Imports become more expensive. Food, medicine, and fuel can become harder to afford. This is why some economists describe sanctions as a form of economic warfare. Because even though the target may be a government, the shockwaves travel through the entire economy. So, do sanctions actually work? This is where things become complicated. Sometimes sanctions succeed in forcing political change, but many times they don't. Countries under heavy sanctions often find ways to adapt. They may trade through alternative partners, develop local industries, or build new financial systems. Countries like North Korea, Iran, and Russia have all spent years learning how to bypass sanctions.
They create new trade routes, use alternative currencies, or work with countries that refuse to follow Western restrictions. This turns sanctions into a long-term economic chess game between global powers. So the next time you hear about sanctions in the news, remember this: they may not involve bombs or missiles, but they are still weapons. Weapons designed to control economies, influence governments, and reshape global power. Because in today's world, the battlefield isn't only on land or sea. It's also inside banks, markets, and global trade networks. And understanding that hidden financial battlefield is the key to understanding modern geopolitics.